and happy Wisdom Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Maria Milagros. You're an incredible human. And this is your weekly Wednesday video where I give you nuggets, tips, tools, techniques, life coaching tools in order to help you, me, us get to a place where we feel healthier, happier, more sane, because really, we all need that these days. And this month, during the month of May, my focus is on hope and keeping the hope alive. And sometimes, based on what might be happening in the world or the conditions around us, it might feel hopeless. And so we might lose hope. And then there are ways to regain hope. So I want to talk to you really briefly a little bit about the ways that we lose hope, and then some ways that we can regain hope. The part about losing hope, I'm going to keep it shorter just so that I have more time to talk about the ways to regain hope, because that's where the meat is going to be. And if you're looking for any more information on any of these things, or if you want to talk it through, you have a couple of options. One, you can email me if you have a question. You can also put it in the comments below as we go along. Put it in the comments if you have any questions or anything, and then I will get to those as soon as I can. Or if you're interested in doing some life coaching with me because you really are in need of getting yourself back to a space of hope, you can go to my website. It's www.mariamilagros.net/life coach, or click on the tab that says coaching, and you'll find more information. I did move all of my fees to a sliding scale during this time because I want people to be able to still get my services, and to be able to do that, recognizing that COVID-19 has affected a lot of people's financial stabilities. So that way you're still getting the services, but you're not paying the full amount. Okay, so let's dive right in. Losing hope. Here are some ways that we lose hope. One, we can lose hope just from a lack of having hope altogether from our childhood. A lot of times when we are abused, neglected, or have suffered trauma in our childhood, we surrender this idea of hope because it seems futile. Another way that we lose hope is by a loss of connections, be it in relationships, through change, through divorce, through breakups, through death, right? Another way that we lose hope is by creating expectations or rehearsing stories that are hurtful or that aren't real at all. We often find ourselves creating these whole scenarios and stories and then saying it needs to look like this and be like this. And then when it doesn't, we lose hope. Another way that we can lose hope is by actually being victimized through abuse, through prejudice, through racism. Maybe your house was broken into, or something was stolen from you, or something along those lines. When we are put in a position of being a victim, oftentimes we do surrender hope because we have been violated. And another way that we lose hope is through burnout from either our work or our everyday life tasks and roles that we have to play. Okay, so knowing that we have a couple of things over here, I'm going to address all of those through the 5 things that I have for you in terms of how to regain hope. So here we go. To regain hope, one of the ways that we can do that is by becoming aware of our current perspective and our mindset. If we recognize and are aware that we have a negative mindset, then we can use that as a way to create small shifts and to pivot ourselves into something that is healthier and more positive, because we cannot rectify what we do not identify. So we must become aware of where we stand in terms of, do I feel hopeless? Like, we have to name it, right? We have to name it in order to be able to really do the work with it. So awareness is really important. It's something that I talk about all the time anyways, and it's really important in every area of your life, not just in terms of hope. The second thing that we can do to help rebuild our hope is to accept that there are just some things in life that are going to happen, because that's life. Change is going to happen. Relationships are probably going to eventually end. And maybe not all relationships, but relationships have a tendency to end. You grow apart, you move away, you get caught up in your life, things are different, they get busy, maybe they had a baby, they just, we have to accept that change is inevitable. Change is consistent. And I think the more that we allow ourselves to become aware of and fully internalize the idea that change is consistent, the less damaging change feels like, right? Because a lot of times I hear people say, oh my gosh, it's changed and now it's so hard. Is it though? Or is it just new? And if you just look at it and recognize that life is always changing, then maybe it won't feel so detrimental. And that, again, goes back to that awareness mindset. I mean, awareness of our mindset, in that change is inevitable. It's going to happen. It's always here. It's always present, right? Now, in thinking about that, I also want you to think about other things in your life that are inevitable. There are going to be some things that happen across the board in everyone's life. And a lot of times we create this scenario or this story that it's not going to happen to me. And then when it does, we're like, it's not fair. But that's life. It literally happens to everybody. So there are some things that we can release ourselves of this hopelessness just by changing the story that we rehearse in terms of what that thing is. Another thing that we can do to increase or regain our hope is to, again, acknowledge the stories that we're telling ourselves. Acknowledge when we are creating expectations for other people and how they should or should not act. Because when we say, you need to act like this and be like this and fit in this box and hit all these checkpoints, and then they don't, because Lord forbid they're their own people with their own ideas about how they should live their lives, and they have their own backgrounds and their own filters, we like, oh no, it's hopeless. What's the point? Because you're creating this fake scenario. You're creating this story that isn't healthy for anyone. You're creating these unrealistic expectations that lead you to disappointment and them to failure, whether you realize it or not, simply by creating this structure saying it has to look like this and fit like this. So when we allow ourselves to release that, right, to acknowledge the story, and then I see what I'm doing here, and then I have to release this story, it allows us to, again, become more accepting of the fact that people are people, and it allows us to acknowledge that we have been creating this mindset of it's supposed to look like this, because that's not real. Another thing that we can do is to take action. And by taking action, I want to be clear that sometimes taking action looks like actually doing something, and I'm going to go like this, doing something, and checking things off of your list. And sometimes taking action means resting, recovering, recharging, meditating, praying, sitting still. Those things are also doing something. And I do this because a lot of people think that if you're meditating, you're just sitting there breathing, you're not doing anything. It's actually some of the greatest stuff you can be doing for yourself, and people who are super busy should be doing it. It's something that you should make a priority if you find that your life is really busy. Carving out 5 to 10 minutes at the start, middle, or end of your day, or in multiple spaces, is essential to keep you in a space where you're feeling centered and rooted in your core values, in what you know to be true. And it also helps keep your mind clear so that you're more creative, you're more solution oriented, you're more productive, you're more positive, you're more efficient, you're more effective. That is a true story of meditation and rest and recovery. So it is also something that you could be doing. Essentially, what I'm talking about here is taking care of yourself and making sure that you're meeting all of your basic physical needs, any spiritual, mental, emotional needs, and then doing things that check things off of your fun list, making a goal for yourself and saying, this is what I want to accomplish, creating all the steps, chunking it down, and then taking it one little itty bitty baby step at a time. That's also doing something. I'm talking about inspired action here. And then finally, the last thing that I have for you to help you regain hope is to appreciate. I cannot speak enough about the power of gratitude. It is so important that we are taking the time out in our lives to appreciate the little things like paper and tape and markers, and the big things like love and change and evolution and expansion and knowledge and wisdom. All of those things are really important. And the more that we focus on all the things, people, experiences, and places in our lives that we have to appreciate, the more that we find ourselves in the present moment, and the more that we find ourselves coming back to hopefulness, which is essential, especially at a time like this, especially in this particular American climate that we're dealing with. And I'm not talking about the weather. It is essential that we hold on to hope. There's this great quote by Desmond Tutu, and he says, hope is being able to see that there is light despite all the darkness. Now, for those of you who don't know, Desmond Tutu is an anti-apartheid and human rights activist who worked under the Nelson Mandela government, and he also has this thing called the Forgiveness Project, which is so right? So you should look that up if you're interested in finding out more. And it's at times like this in this country where I turn to the knowledge and the wisdom of people like Desmond Tutu to remind myself that my job is to stay rooted in love. It is to forgive, and it is to continue to find hope while doing the inspired work from that place of love, so that we can continue to change systems, which essentially means changing one person at a time. And sometimes that one person is ourselves, and to continue to cultivate a community and a world that is filled with compassion and sees diversity as a beautiful thing rather than something to be afraid of. Okay, so that's what I have for you. I hope that this was beneficial. If you want more, by all means, hit me up. And if you like this, give it a thumbs up. If you know someone who can benefit, please share it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. And yeah, I'll see you next week. I love you. There's nothing you can do about it. Peace.